Wrestling fans, are you ready? For the thousands in attendance and the millions watching around the world, let's get ready to rumble!
Happy Halloween, folks. Welcome back to WrestleRant Radio for October 31st, 2024. I'm Graham Giason Matthews. Hope you guys are doing well and having a great Halloween holiday today. The last time the show fell on Halloween was 5 years ago today, and that was right after the Crown Jewel pay-per-view. I think we might have done the show before Crown Jewel. I don't think I did it afterward, because I think I had to watch the show on delay, and then it went out right afterward. So I think I did like a prediction show for the pay-per-view that day. If you can recall, that was the pay-per-view that opened with Brock Lesnar versus Cain Velasquez for the WWE Championship, and the fucking, dumpster fire that was. Also featuring Team Hogan versus Team Ric Flair, neither of whom were involved in the actual teams. They were just like the captains or like the fucking mascots or whatever on the side. And that show was also headlined by Seth Rollins and Bray Wyatt Part 2. Everyone remembers the whole debacle inside Hell in the Cell a couple of weeks earlier in that awful Hell in the Cell match at the Hell in the Cell pay-per-view. But what a lot of people do not remember is that they did end up putting the belt on Bray. And not as bad of a match, but that Last Man Standing, whatever that match was, I think it was Last Man Standing or no DQ, whatever the fuck it was, later on in the night, and Bray Wyatt, The Fiend, became the new Universal Champion. When a lot of people thought, okay, they already didn't have him win at Hell in the Cell, so why would he win here? At that point, just put the belt on him at Hell in the Cell. But no, they put the belt on him on that show instead in Saudi Arabia. And a bit of a not-so-fun fact, Bray Wyatt's, Universal Championship run started in Saudi Arabia and ended in Saudi Arabia. He won the belt from Rollins on that show 5 years ago. Then he lost it a couple of months later, also in Saudi Arabia at the Super Showdown show, to Goldberg in an equally awful match. So Bray Wyatt never really got his due as The Fiend as Universal Champion, because he also won it, obviously later on in 2020 against Braun Strowman at SummerSlam before losing it a week later back to Roman Reigns at that Payback pay-per-view where he was not pinned. But this is not meant to be a Bray Wyatt retrospective episode. This is the Halloween episode of WrestleRant Radio, and it really goes to show you how much has actually changed in the wrestling industry in the last 5 years. And I honestly don't even know how we filled the hour of WrestleRant Radio back then talking about the awful product that was WWE. And I guess also around that time you had AEW as well, and they were starting, and they had a pretty good product starting out, and there was a lot to talk about there as well. But on the WWE front, there was a whole lot to complain about back in late 2019. And it's interesting to see how the tides have turned, how the momentum has changed, kind of in WWE's favor, them putting forth a better product in the last couple of months, the last couple of years. Not that there is, the AEW product is as bad as WWE 2019 was. I've seen that comparison thrown about a lot this year and in recent months, but AEW is not nearly as bad as WWE was, Raw, SmackDown back around this time 5 years ago. But I thought I would start the show today talking about AEW, because they really haven't discussed a whole lot of AEW in recent weeks. I did review, I think, Grand Slam and do my predictions for Wrestle Dream a couple of weeks ago, but, a lot has changed on Dynamite since then, and I thought their Fright Night episode was one of their better episodes, actually, in the last couple of weeks, months, a very eventful episode, like I said, so we'll get into that momentarily before throwing it to my conversation with Mr. Marceau, breaking down all the latest in WWE, Halloween Havoc thoughts, some thoughts from Raw, SmackDown, predictions for Crown Jewel, our thoughts on the new WWE ID program announced earlier this week, and a whole lot more. WrestleRant Radio, new episodes available every single Thursday on WrestleRant.com, WrestleRantRadio.com. Rate the show, review the show, subscribe to the show. Never miss new episodes every single Thursday. So as I mentioned, do want to give my thoughts here on Dynamite from last night before we have on Mr. Marceau, and he has a limited time today, so I wanted to kind of use that time talking about WWE ID and everything else I mentioned a moment ago. But I thought I would open the episode here today talking about the Fright Night edition of Dynamite from last night. They opened the show with Orange Cassidy addressing Jon Moxley, and that's the whole big angle they're doing right now in AEW is the whole Jon Moxley takeover of the company. It seemed like they were hinting at a higher power there for a while, and a lot of people, myself included, thought it would be Shane McMahon. And that could be still to come. I don't think so. At this point, I feel like if they were going to do that, they would have done it already at WrestleDream. They could be doing a similar angle to what they did at World's End last year that closed with the whole Undisputed Kingdom reveal. They could be doing something similar at World's End this year, with Shane McMahon arriving and kind of being the higher power, the mastermind behind this Jon Moxley-led group. The only issue there, though, is that that's in 2 months. I don't think you can wait 2 months to do an angle like that and to do a big reveal like that. I feel like sooner would be better. What we've gotten so far, personally, I like Moxley. I think what he's doing is fine. It really, to me, hasn't lit the world on fire. It really hasn't clicked completely yet. So I'm going to give it more time, see what they do with it, see if it's going to get me invested. But what we've gotten so far with them brawling with the fucking Dark Order and Top Flight, Action, and Andretti, and a lot of the mid-card, lower mid-card guys in AEW, it really doesn't do a whole lot for me. We saw more of that on this show. Thankfully, the fucking Dark Order was not out there. We did see more of Top Flight and Action and Andretti going after these guys. The problem is, I like those guys. Lio Rush as well. But if you're feeding those guys to Moxley, and they never win a match that matters, then why should we give a shit that they are going after Moxley and company? At that point, they should focus on other people. Moxley and company, that is, should be focusing on other opponents than just Top Flight, Action, Andretti, and Lio Rush. Because again, I like that pairing, but they've lost every match that matters. They get their asses handed them every single week. I guess they got the better of the former BCC, because I don't think they're really the Blackpool Combat. I don't think they're the Blackpool Combat Club anymore, technically. I think that name went out the window when they kicked Bryan Danielson to the curb. But the Jon Moxley-led group, and I think Death Riders might be the new name I saw yesterday, that was trademarked by Moxley, so that could be the new name in due time when they get that cleared and whatnot. But yeah, they got to do more to really get me invested in that. I think setting up Orange Cassidy as the first contender for Moxley's championship at Full Gear makes sense. Orange Cassidy, which I completely forgot about up until recently, actually beat Moxley on last year's Full Gear show. They are 1-1. Moxley beat Cassidy to win the AEW International Championship at All Out last year, and then Cassidy got the belt back in the meantime after Moxley lost it to fucking Ray Phoenix or whatever, and then Cassidy beat him at Full Gear. So they are 1-1. To have them run it back a year later, this time with the World Championship on the line, isn't the most compelling match. It's not the biggest marquee match they can do, and I'm not even really sure what that would be right now anyway. It's not that, and it's not really main event worthy either. But, it's a match that makes sense with Cassidy being the heart and soul of AEW and having been around for a while allows him to kind of develop his character a little bit more than what we've seen up to this point. So I do like that, and what we got on Wednesday I thought was solid. The Adam Cole-Buddy Matthews matchup I thought was really good. They're telling the story that Adam Cole is fragile. Buddy Matthews told Adam Cole that last week on the show, and he took advantage of his previously injured ankle on the show last night during their matchup. Cole winning as you would expect, but I thought they had a good match. The whole gimmick is that either Adam Cole or Roderick Strong will be facing MJF at Full Gear. The first one to get to 3 wins, 3 consecutive wins I would imagine, will get their hands on MJF at Full Gear. So obviously it's going to be Adam Cole. And the Undisputed Kingdom is back together for now, which is just who gives a fuck? But the predictable path of which they're probably going to take is Cole gets 2 wins. He beat Buddy Matthews this week. Strong will probably get 2 wins on Rampage or fucking Collision, like anyone gives a shit. And then their respective third match will be against each other. And the winner of that match faces Cole, or rather faces MJF, and it will be Cole, against MJF at Full Gear. So that's probably where they're going with it, I would imagine. Lazy writing to me, I don't really care, but it is something that they're doing, so there is that. But they're doing Adam Cole and Malachi Black next week. They set that up after this match was over, with Malachi Black coming out and shaking the hand of Adam Cole. So I thought that was cool. We're gonna get another really good match from those two on next week's show. So I'm looking forward to that too. So I thought that was a highlight last night. The Kamille Kris Statlander match didn't really I thought it would be a better match. The booking of Kamille so far has been interesting. Early on, she was kind of made out to be this dominant, bodyguard for Mercedes Moné, and I thought that was the right role for her. But then they gave her a competitive match with Queen Aminata, who is good. She's very talented, but their match was not good. And Kamille should not have struggled to beat Queen Aminata a week before facing before facing Kris Statlander. And they had their match last night, Kris and Kamille did, and it wasn't really anything out of the ordinary. I thought it was a perfectly well-wrestled match, but Kamille was not really made out to be this dominant monster where Kris Statlander beat her and it meant something. It really didn't. Mercedes kind of, shooing away Kamille afterward. The split is coming. I feel like it's still too soon to do it. They only joined forces 2 or 3 months ago, so it would totally be premature to be booking a, split between the two. And I think it should lead to the MJF Wardlow kind of formula of Kamille being the one to turn on Mercedes and not the other way around. I feel like if Mercedes is going to be the heel, and she is, and Kris Statlander ain't the heel, she was the heel and then she turned back babyface for some random fucking reason, Kamille could get a big pop out of attacking Mercedes if they book it right. So far, they really haven't, because Kamille really hasn't come across as well as she probably could be, given her, own potential and whatnot. But what we've seen from her so far has been decent up until like a week or two ago anyway. And I thought the match with Statlander was decent. So hopefully they can kind of rebound with her, but they are clearly headed toward Kris Statlander, Mercedes Moné for the AEW TBS Championship, very likely at Full Gear. The other 2 big moments and matches from last night's show, Private Party finally becoming the new AEW World Tag Team Champions, beating the Young Bucks for the belts in a very good match. The whole stipulation was that if Private Party lost, they would have to split up. And that would have been incredibly fucking stupid. But I couldn't put it past them to have the Young Bucks retain again because they won at Full Gear, or rather at Wrestle Dream a couple of weeks ago. And I thought that was the wrong call on that show. So thankfully they made the right call this time. They had them redeem themselves, Private Party win, the new AEW World Tag Team Champions. Should have happened a lot sooner than it did, but listen, better late than never is what I say. And it was a really good match, so I enjoyed that for what it was. Hopefully Private Party can help elevate that tag team division. That division has been on ice for a very long time now, so give them some quality teams to work with and let them shine. Don't cut their reign short within a month. Hopefully they're on the show. They're not booked like an afterthought, and this wasn't just a one-and-done moment, because I thought this was a great moment. Now you got to capitalize on it and keep the momentum rolling and not just have them disappear from the show completely. With the Bucks, what it looks like they're setting up is that they are now no longer the AEW World Tag Team Champions. They were then shown leaving the arena. And when asked by Alex Marvez, who is still shockingly a fucking interviewer for them, I don't know why. And he seems like a nice guy, but as an interviewer, he fucking sucks. He always has. I don't know why he's still in that role. He must have something over Tony Khan. But anyway, he was asking them, why are you leaving the arena? And the Young Bucks said, well, AEW is too chaotic right now, so we're going to choose to work from home. They're going to work remotely going forward, which I can't complain too much about because this whole elite heel group thing has been a complete fucking bust. I don't know if they go to fight Moxley and his crew, if Okada and Jack Perry would also go babyface. I would think not. I would think it would only be, the Young Bucks. I really don't care. I mean, this has been the direction they've been teasing for the last couple of weeks with the Young Bucks kind of going back to their roots and fighting for the heart and soul of AEW. They just turned heel again less than a year ago. They just came back to TV earlier this year, and you're already going to have them go back to being baby faces? I just don't care. It feels like they specifically have done everything they can possibly do in this company, including being baby faces and heels many times over. So we're at a point now where it's hard to give a shit about whatever the Young Bucks are doing. The whole elite takeover thing, now Moxley's doing it, but they had done it first, or last anyway, a couple of months ago, and it sucked. The execution wasn't good. That whole attack on Tony Khan wasn't really thought out all that well because there was really no aftermath, and any aftermath was completely fucking butchered in terms of continuing that momentum and getting people to care and whatever, getting people invested. I am currently at a point where I don't give a shit about the Young Bucks. So them being the ones to kind of help out the heart and souls of AEW, being the heart and souls of AEW, and joining Team AEW against Moxley's crew, that doesn't really do much for me, brother. So I know that's where they're going with it. I will not be surprised when it happens. But when it does happen, it will be hard to care. Because I don't know. Until Kenny Omega comes back, maybe he's like the missing ingredient here. And there's some, like the thing is with that too, they beat the fuck out of Kenny Omega. When Kenny Omega, like, he came back for a brief angle where they attacked him, and it looked like Kenny would come back and face Okada, and he probably still will. But it's like, how do you explain the Bucks attacking Omega and then immediately making up with him as soon as he comes back, whenever that is? That would be very fucking dumb. So, we'll see where they go with it. I'm happy Private Party are the new tag team champions. I'm glad the Young Bucks are no longer the tag team champions, but I can't say I'm exactly looking forward to whatever they got coming up next. That being the Bucks, because we all know where it's going, and it's not all that interesting. So when they headlined the show with Swerve and Shelton, you probably knew where this was going. But they had a very good main event. Shelton has come across really, really well so far in AEW. For all the company's creative faults right now, I think they've done a great job with this MVP, Shelton Benjamin, Hurt Business pairing. I think, Bobby Lashley now being in the crew, now being in the mix as of last night. He did arrive, and we kind of figured he would arrive if this match went on last. And that was a great moment. But even before Bobby debuted last night, Shelton coming in, having those back-to-back wins over Leo Rush and Sammy Guevara, made for two really, really good matches. MVP's great in the managerial role, so you got these two working really well together, coming across well, handing out their business cards to other people on the roster, kind of building intrigue to what they might be doing next and who they might be recruiting. I think that's really, really cool. And Swerve's also been, coming across well, as always, including at WrestleDream when he turned down the request to join them. And now he's going to be an enemy of the new Hurt Syndicate. Now, MVP did get on the mic last night after Bobby Lashley came out. He was on the phone after Shelton lost. Shelton's first loss in AEW. And he hasn't been here for that long, but it was his first loss in the company. But he gets on the phone, and I thought he was going to say, call Roman Reigns, like Paul Heyman used to say on the phone a fucking year ago when Roman Reigns wouldn't show up to work, and he would, Paul Heyman would just call him instead. And that never really went anywhere, but he would do it so much, it's like, all right, Paul, we got to move on to the next chapter of this story that does not involve you on your fucking phone calling Roman Reigns, or call The Rock, call the Bloodline, whatever. So he gets on the phone, does MVP, and calls up Bobby Lashley, who arrived immediately thereafter and attacked Swerve, attacked Prince Nana, and the Hurt Business is back in business, baby. So MVP got on the mic and said, we're back in business, our business is back, or whatever. But what I think they will be going forward, knowing what they'll be known as going forward, based on the little note cards they've been handing out to their little clients, the little note cards they've been handing out to their clients in recent weeks. It says on it Hurt Syndicate, because Hurt Business is obviously owned by WWE. That's a WWE trademark, so they can't go by that. I think Hurt Syndicate's an even better name. That's a great fucking name. So that was cool. A really well done debut for Bobby Lashley in AEW, aligning with Shelton Benjamin, MVP, for the first time as the Hurt Business in 3 years? 3.5 years? Because they did have teases of, getting those guys back together, including Shelton and Cedric. But Bobby never really fully accepted their help. They did interfere in his matches, but they never really fully formed the group back together before they, all left the company. And Cedric is still there, but, the other three are gone. They all kind of left around the same time. Shelton got fired last year. MVP and Bobby left on their own just recently. And now they're all back together. Now, the question is, how much will this really benefit AEW? Well, currently, they're the best thing going in the entire company. This Hurt Business stuff has been the best part of the product for the last couple of weeks. Well more than the Moxley stuff, in my opinion. But the question is, there are three guys that are all close to 50. I think MVP is over 50. Shelton Benjamin might be 45, 46. I think Bobby might be 40, 48 or whatever. And you would never know it. All three of these guys look great. I mean, MVP doesn't really wrestle anymore, but Shelton can still go. We know Bobby can still go. But will they put in other members to help kind of benefit from the group? If they're a group of three near 50-year-olds, I mean, I'm not going to complain too much because they're a great fucking group. But will it really benefit other members in the roster? I mean, yeah, they could put over other people by facing them and losing to them at some point. Ultimately, yeah. But I think they should put someone, which they did originally, put someone in the spot of Cedric Alexander. It won't be Cedric himself. He's still in WWE. He re-signed apparently, reportedly earlier this year, so it won't be him. But you could put in a Ricochet or a Leo Rush. Two ex-WWE guys, I get it. But it could be a homegrown talent as well. It could be a Powerhouse Hobbs. We haven't seen him in a long time. Reportedly, he is clear to compete and clear to return. There's no obvious role for him to come back in aside from the Don Callis family, but the Don Callis family has Lance Archer now. They have Brian Cage now. They do not need Powerhouse Hobbs. So I would hope Hobbs does not come back as part of that group. That would be dumb. He's been a part of a lot of groups in AEW, Team Taz, the Don Callis family, that QT Marshall group that was fucking awful. That did not last long either, so I know there would be some skepticism among fans about putting him in this new group. Not new, but this new AEW group with Benjamin and Bobby and MVP. But I think he could shine. If Bobby is like the crown jewel, and it could be Hobbs too, but if Bobby's like the crown jewel, you need kind of like a heavy, and that could be Hobbs. I've seen people bat around the idea of EJ and Duca joining the group. That could be too much too soon just because he's been kind of floundering for the last little while in Ring of Honor. And anyone who watched his work in MLW knows how good EJ and Duca is and his potential and the star that he could become. I think at some point that would be a great idea. Right now I'm not so sure because he hasn't even really worked many AEW matches. But that could be one way of introducing him into the fold is by putting him in that group and having him be like the guy that kind of benefits from working with Bobby and Benjamin and MVP. So something to keep an eye on. But it's very clear heading into Full Gear we will be getting Swerve and very likely him against Bobby Lashley one-on-one. That's a feud. That's a match I'm looking forward to. That sounds great. Swerve can lose and he'll be perfectly fine. He already did lose to Bryan Danielson back at All In. He already did lose to Adam Page. Technically, it wasn't a win that mattered in storyline, I guess, with it being an unsanctioned match. But he did lose that match to Adam Page at that pay-per-view. So I know, like, people might be, worried about him losing again on pay-per-view. This time to Bobby Lashley. But if you want to establish Bobby Lashley as the top star out of the gate, he's got to win that match. Swerve can win the rematch at World's End or whatever, but I think Bobby should win the first one. But, that closed out what I thought was one of the better Dynamites in some time. So they got some momentum coming out of last night's show. The question is always, can they capitalize? Can they keep it going? Because coming out of their pay-per-views, which are always good to great, it doesn't really seem like they can. All In was awesome. All Out was a really good show too. I thought Wrestle Dream was a pretty good show. But the Dynamites on the weekly, I don't even really talk about Rampage or Collision because we already know those shows don't matter. But Dynamite Weekly feels like an inconsequential show. This week it did not. This was a special show, and that's great. This was like their version of Halloween Havoc. But they got to keep it going. That's the problem. They got to keep it going and keep putting forth quality shows and shows that people want to see. They set up Jamie Hayter and Penelope Ford for next week's show. Who gives a shit? Who cares? You know what I mean? You got to book shows that people want to see. This was a show I wanted to see. I watched it, not live, but soon after, and I thought it was enjoyable. But you got to keep this going and put together a compelling card for Full Gear. That is the key going forward. So with all my AEW thoughts out of the way, we're going to throw it to my conversation with Mr. Marceau, talking all things in the WWE world, including the ID program and everything else going on right now on this very happy Halloween. Mr. Marceau, brother, what's going on?
Doing good. How are you?
I am doing well. I am recovering well from the Dodgers winning the World Series. I feel like it was inevitable. I can't believe they blew a 5-0 lead. We talked about that before. Pretty crazy shit. But we do got a lot to get into here today. Limited time with you, Mr. Marceau, so we'll not waste any more time. But WWE ID program, I wanted to get your thoughts on this. WWE announced this the other day. They're calling it their WWE ID program. It's to support indie wrestling development. That's what they're saying. So in the press release they put out the other day, just to kind of sum up exactly what this is, they're saying, and I quote, "It's constructed to support independent wrestling prospects and wrestling schools with world-class training, development, and mentorship." They also said it's set to provide prominent independent wrestling schools with the WWE ID official designation, with the goal of providing new trainees and existing talent at these select institutions with enhanced developmental opportunities. And they said that it includes Booker T's Reality of Wrestling in Houston, Cody Rhodes' Nightmare Factory in Atlanta, which is notable because it actually kind of used to be the feeder system for AEW, but now they're working with WWE, obviously, because Cody Rhodes is there. Seth Rollins' Black and Brave Academy in Davenport, Iowa, Elite Pro Wrestling Training Center in Concord, New Hampshire, and the Knox X, or whatever it's called, Pro Academy in Los Angeles. So a lot of people were kind of blowing up about this on Monday. A lot of overly extreme reactions. A lot of people blowing up about how overly great this is. I feel like it kind of falls somewhere in the middle. And kind of before I break down the pros and cons, just want to get your reaction to the news and whether you think this is a pro or a con or a bit of both for WWE and the pro wrestling industry as a whole.
Yeah, I mean, I saw it and I was like, oh, this is interesting. And I looked into it more and I was like, oh, it's just fluffing up the people that already have school and stuff like that.
Yeah.
think it's a decent idea, but like when all the gyms are basically people who are contracted with WWE, it seems a little, like I said, it seems a little fluff job. But I mean, I think it's a decent idea. But I think if these people were going to this school already, I feel like they'd get a better look than most other people. So I'm not overly sure why it's a big deal. But I mean, I think it's a good idea if it was like non-contracted WWE gyms. Like I said, if someone's going to Seth Rollins' school and he thinks they have like the ability or they have a good look, like I think he just put in a word. Like I don't know, you know what I'm saying? Like same with like Booker T, Cody. I feel like I don't know. It just seems like it's too in-house. I feel like if it was non-WWE contracted people, then it seemed a lot like cooler than what this really is.
You know, it's interesting because like if they're going to these schools. Does that mean, and it wasn't really cleared up, and I'm sure we'll get more details in the weeks and days that follow and stuff, but do you think that means that you solely have to have your sights set on going to WWE? Like, what if you think you have a better shot in AEW or a Ring of Honor or TNA or whatever? Like, do you have to go to WWE? Like, can you work with AEW-bound people and other independent promotions? Like, that was kind of my, among other questions, but one of my main questions, like, is this kind of making it exclusive to work with WWE and there's no other pathway to work with other companies? I feel like that could pose a problem if true.
Yeah, I mean, I guess there's no real guidelines that were announced, but yeah, now that you said that, I guess like you'd kind of be pigeonholed if you're going to work with WWE. Maybe, like I said, maybe if they're still there. I don't know. It's a great question, though. Yeah,
I don't know. I just feel like it could be strict, too, because if they're obviously, they're not just, they're training academies, but like some of these, reality of wrestling is they host shows and they work with other promotions and do other stuff. I just feel like if some of these people have WWE ID contracts, there might be something written in there. And again, I don't know, and maybe we find out at some point. Maybe I'm just exaggerating here, but I'm just kind of providing worst case scenario. What if they can't like lose to other people? Like, hey, I'm headed to WWE at some point, so I can't be booked to lose. Like, that's not the biggest concern I think that some of these people have, but it is a concern. Like, oh, I'm a WWE ID prospect, so I got to win all my matches, brother. Like, that doesn't work for me, brother, to be putting other people over before I head to WWE. I feel like that could be a problem too. But again, I could just be exaggerating here. That doesn't actually end up being a thing.
Yeah, I mean, I think it all depends on what's going on. I mean, when you're booking these people, maybe, like you said, maybe it's one of those things that they have something in their contract that they can't lose or they have to be used in a certain way. So, not quite sure. I think in theory it's a good idea. I just wish it wasn't with gyms that already have WWE, like, contracted people.
Yeah, and I think it also kind of, the other concern that people have is that it kind of creates this, if they didn't already have this, a stranglehold on independent wrestling. And some people were kind of relating it to WWE's takeover of the UK indie scene when they started working with Progress and not Rev Pro, I don't think, but like other promotions, and then creating NXT UK out of it, which was solely designed to kind of cool down the momentum that UK wrestling had at that point, which they kind of did by taking a lot of their talent. Not all of their talent, but a lot of their talent back in 2016, 2017, 2018, Gunther being a part of that wave of talent. And a lot of those people ended up going on to doing bigger and better things on the main roster and whatnot. So it did end up being successful in that respect. But, a lot of people kind of look at this as WWE's way, and Triple H specifically, because when he was running NXT, it kind of seemed like a lot of the talent he was bringing in for a certain while, like the Adam Coles, the Dijaks, the Leo Rushes, the Bobby Fishes, Kyle O'Reillys, a lot of Ring of Honor people, when they were kind of on fire, and surely they would have brought in the Elite if they wanted to come in back in 2018, 2019, but they created AEW instead, so they didn't end up coming in. But that was kind of Triple H's way of creating a super indie within his own promotion. And it made for an amazing brand in NXT at the time, classic black and gold, but it did do damage to a lot of promotions that just couldn't compete with WWE. And WWE kind of working with these promotions might, create less of a pathway for other companies as well. That's a lot. I'm just kind of rambling here at this point, but I don't know. Do you feel like this, is it a concern for the future as far as WWE dominating the wrestling scene, or do you think it just might be a whole lot of, again, like I said, exaggeration from some fans, and it's more of a time will tell approach?
Yeah, I mean, I think, like you said, with the indie stuff, and especially in the UK, when you're like the big dog, I guess, like, you can kind of make moves that other people don't like, or it seems like you're kind of like monopolizing or taking over the industry. But I mean, when you're the big fish, I guess that's something you can do. And like I said, maybe it could hamper the other things. But like I said, I think if it was more like, again, non-contracted indie people or indie promotions, then maybe it would seem like they're kind of monopolizing. But they're working with people they already know. So, I mean, I don't think it's that big of a deal.
Yeah, no, I think for now it might seem like a big deal. Just given WWE's track record, I would be skeptical. But I do think it's an overall, it's a bit of both, but I do think it's a positive thing. Because you and I specifically, when WWE first launched that NIL program, they first launched it in 2021, but like when they started having fans back and shit in 2022, we talked to a lot of people from WWE when we were in Nashville a few years ago. And our main question was, like, as cool as that program is, and it has undoubtedly been successful. Because I saw someone make a comment the other day saying, after they announced this WWE ID program, someone had said, that just goes to show you the WWE Performance Center around for 10 plus years. It's been a failure, which is why they have to resort and bring in indie people in, which cannot be farther from the truth. It took a while to get going. I mean, the Performance Center so far has been a success. I mean, when you have people in the main roster, like a Roman Reigns, for fucking example, on top, among other people, Bianca Belair, it certainly has not been a failure. But the NIL program... Braun Breaker, exactly. I mean, the NIL program specifically. You look at the
I feel like you could name off a ton of people. Kalani Jordan, Rick Williams. I mean, you could go through a list of people that went through NIL. Tiffany Stratton. I mean, saying that's a failure, you're just a hater and just not.
No, that's just stupid. That's just wrong. That's just inaccurate. But
like you said, we just named 5 people, and that's just like off my head. I could guarantee if you skim through the roster, you could find plenty of people that are through NIL.
No, specifically in NXT right now. Did you mention Trick too? I think I heard you mention Trick.
I said Trick, Kalani,
Obafemi.
I honestly think Tony D'Angelo was too. But
yeah, I think so too. Yeah, Tony.
Tony. I mean, not that she's amazing, but like Rizzo. Assuming Jada Parker, Lola Vice. I mean,
yeah.
Like I said, if you skim through the roster, there'd be plenty of people that were through NIL.
Oh, yeah. No, I mean, a majority of the NXT roster right now is from NIL. So, I mean, it definitely has worked out for the better. But I think one of our main questions back then was, like, are you still hiring indie talent? Because there was that edict at one point where, we're not going to hire any indie people, which is so fucking stupid. Because you need someone for these green people to work with. And not just the people that you have there at the time already on the roster. You need to be able to hire more indie people. And they have brought in plenty of established talent already. I mean, they just fucking signed the Motor City Machine Guns recently, which we'll get to momentarily. Among other people, they brought people back and whatnot. But you need to be able to hire indie people. Like Carmelo was not an NIL aspect, or prospect rather. He came from like the lower level indies actually up here in the Northeast. And he's obviously worked out really well in NXT and the main roster as well. But you need more people like that, whether they're as experienced as Carmelo Hayes or not. And I think this accomplishes that, to kind of get a better, healthier balance of bringing in athletes with no wrestling experience at all that can be future stars, but also bringing in people that are aspiring to get to WWE that just don't have the real avenue to get there, and now they do. So I think it's a nice balance.
No, yeah, I think you need a balance. Like you said, you need experienced people for these greenhorns, for lack of better words, to work with. So, I mean, you're not going to get better working against other people that are still learning or really don't know what they're doing. So you need a little mixture of both. Obviously, some of these people, like a Bianca or a Braun Breaker, like they kind of got it instantly. And I mean, I feel like they never really, like, they just were like great athletes off the bat, and it kind of translated. But some of these people do need experienced people to work with to kind of polish them up. So I think you need a little mixture of both.
Yeah, and I think a mixture of both, if they can kind of find the right balance there and bring in the right people. And it depends who they're bringing in. Maybe complete unknowns, which you need once in a while, or people that are coming from like Javon Evans, for example. I didn't honestly really know who he was. I'm not a GCW guy, but he came from GCW, and he's already done really, really well in NXT. And he's someone that, as part of like this WWE ID program, I think could really excel. So I'm looking forward to seeing what kind of shape this takes. Hopefully it ends up being more of a positive than a negative, but I don't blame people for being skeptical with WWE's track record with this sort of stuff, but I am optimistic for the future. Speaking of NXT, though, not a full-on review, but I wanted to get your quick thoughts on the Halloween Havoc show from Sunday. An overall, not really newsworthy show. We did get a new NXT Women's North American Champion in Fallon Henley, which I was happy to see. Zarya debuting, attacking all of Fatal Influence. Really good women's tag team match with Stephanie Valkyrie and Julia beating Cora Jade and Roxanne Perez. They had that tables, ladders, and scares match with Oba Femi and Tony D'Angelo, won by D'Angelo to retain the North American title. The Trick Williams, Ethan Page, Devil's Playground main event wasn't anything really out of the ordinary, but it was good. And I think there was one more match, I'm not remembering, but, the ambulance match as well, won by Ridge Holland. He had fucking Bubba Ray Dudley on the show, the most random thing, but they're setting up something for, I haven't finished NXT yet from Tuesday, but I imagine he's going to be a part of that ECW Arena show coming up on Tuesday, Rob Van Dam as well. So they got some stuff cooking right now with NXT.
Don Marie, don't forget about Don.
How the fuck could I forget about Don Marie? As soon as I heard that, and I sent you the clip, I'm like, I immediately thought of you, because we were literally talking about her the other day and how terrible the Tori Wilson feud was. Or how great, how great.
I was going to say, what are you saying? It was amazing.
How great the Tori Wilson feud was, and her dead father, Al Wilson, from 20 years ago. She's coming back to WWE probably for the first time since then, next week for a street fight, I think, between Jada Parker and Lola Vice. I think in the ECW Arena, and she's going to be the special guest referee. So NXT's got some stuff going on right now. Did you catch any of Halloween Havoc, and if so, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I did. I watched most of it. I think it was from Hershey, Pennsylvania. I think it was pretty well done. Like you said, the ambulance match was the one I just was like, I really don't care about, but I thought everything else was good. I'm surprised Henley beat Jordan, but, I mean, she's been in NXT for a while, so I thought it was a good win for her, and the women tag team match was another good highlight, I thought, of how deep the women's division really is. The
women just remain a recurring highlight on these shows, and I think the biggest kind of statement or question coming out of this show on Sunday, and even NXT's show on Tuesday, where they had this great, really cool segment, I did see this part, where it was like, it almost looked like they were setting up a fucking War Games match, and it wasn't, because they're doing a 10-woman tag on NXT TV next week, but it was all a Fatal Influence, Cora Jade and Roxanne Perez, surrounding, I think it was Zarya, and then Kalani Jordan came out, and then Valkyrie and Julia came out, and then Jordan Grace from TNA, who we have not seen in NXT since June, when she lost to Roxanne Perez in that, champion versus champion match. Setting up a fucking massive match for NXT on next Tuesday. That really should be the Women's War Games match this year if they do one, and nothing involving the current women on the main roster, because nothing's really worthy of War Games right now. But like I said, I think the main question or the main talking point right now, does NXT have the best women's division in the world? And if not, in your opinion, Mr. Marceau, is it more so that they're just better, not booked, but portrayed? Because they're all over NXT every fucking week. They may not have the same talent depth as AEW, for example, but they are much more prominently featured. So I want to get your 2 cents on that as well.
Yeah, I think they're probably more predominantly featured. I mean, weighing them against the main roster, I mean, they have good people in NXT, but I think the main roster just has way bigger stars.
Yeah.
And like I said, I just think they're booked differently. But, I mean, the best booked women's division is definitely NXT. Like I said, they're all over the show, and I don't think that's a bad thing. I think they probably, each week, you probably see at least 10 to 15 women. Like I said, that's at least. I mean, I'm just trying to think on the top of my head. Not even comparing this week. You usually got Vice and Nikita, Jada Parker, all these women you just named here, they're kind of all over the show. Wendy Chu, Tatum Paxley, I can name you probably more NXT women than I could men at this point, but like I said, I think they're all over the show. I think they're booked really well, and I don't know if that's because the men's roster isn't the deepest it's ever been, but I think the women's roster is pretty deep right now, so could kind of be a little bit of both, but I think they have a lot of promising up-and-comers, and like I said, I think it's definitely the best booked weekly women's division.
Yeah, for sure. I think there's an argument there to be saying that it is the best women's division out there in WWE and wrestling in general and whatnot. But I think you make a good point. I completely agree. And you said it right there, the aspiring up-and-comers. I think that is really where they have the edge as far as, obviously the main roster between, Rhea Ripley, Tiffany, even now, Bianca. The star power they have on the main roster, Bayley as well, among other people, Liv Morgan.
I mean, when Charlotte comes back, Becky potentially. I mean, they're so deep, it's unreal.
Yeah, and they have a lot of star power on the main roster. And even if, I think AEW might have better, women's talent as far as in-ring talent than WWE. But I feel like WWE's got the stars. If you want the stars for the women, overall, WWE has it. Even despite the fact that, AEW has Mercedes Moné, who so far has not really felt like a star, but that's a separate conversation. AEW, I feel like, has the better in-ring women's division, in my opinion, but NXT specifically may not have the star power or the in-ring, experience of those two companies and those two brands and whatnot, but they have the potential. Like, you look at the lineup between Jada Barker, someone that's really grown on me. I think Lola Vice could be someone at some point. I'm not a big fan of the whole ass-shaking thing. I've told you that before. It's, is what it is. But, she's got charisma. Kalani Jordan, I think, is really, really good. Cora Jade, Roxanne, obviously. I think they're both very good. Specifically Roxanne. I think she could be a massive star. Julia, Stephanie, two women that should absolutely be top-tier talents on that show at some point. So, the potential's there. They have an amazingly, roster. They have an amazing roster that could go on to become massive stars. It's just more a matter of whether they're booked that way. Because, you look back 5 years ago, in NXT, that was probably the best women's division they've ever assembled. With, Candice, Tegan, Dakota, Raquel was there at one point, Io. There were just Bianca, Rhea Ripley, among other people. But a lot of those women went onto the main roster or did not. Like, Dakota Kai got fired, Tegan Nox got fired, Candice got fired, Rhea was successful, Io is now successful, she was almost going to leave, Bianca's successful, but it was a really small percentage because that was when Vince was still running things. I feel like with the NIL talent specifically, they're going to bring those women up and they're going to be fucking stars in the main roster, even more so than they are right now in NXT. So I really think that's something to keep an eye on, though.
No, like you said, I think they're so loaded. It's just I think they might honestly have just too many people that they're not going to be able to book on the main roster. Yeah. But I think enough of them are young enough that maybe could flush it out. But like I said, I think they have so many. It'd be surprising that they can keep all of them. But they have so many diverse. It's also they just have so many different kind of women too. It's like they have some big women, they have some small women. I feel like they're kind of just all over the place. So I think they're just a good diverse group of people. And I think, like I said, I think the main roster, not that they need these women, but, besides some of the people we named, it's kind of insert random person. So I think, these women have the potential to be good, and I wouldn't be surprised to see some of them start popping up within the next year or two.
That includes the biggest star of them all we neglected to mention, Nikita Lyons. She should be main roster bound at some point, holding gold, right?
I prefer not to say my opinion.
Trash. But yeah, everyone else does.
I was gonna say, if I'm gonna be nice, I just think she's just terrible. But I know people like her for her thing. It's nothing that has to do with her wrestling.
Oh, but, no, we know, yeah.
Yeah, I could probably name 7 other people I'd rather see in the main roster, but
I could probably go deeper than that.
Maybe she'll progress in the next 6 months. I highly doubt that because I think she's probably regressed since we last saw her. But
yeah.
But yeah.
No, I definitely agree. Hey, listen, that's what NXT's for. So the hope is, hopefully she improves, and if not, well, I hear TNA might be hiring her fucking NWA or something. So I don't know. Keep an eye out for her. Did want to mention this, though, from SmackDown last week, a very newsworthy ending to the show. Motor City Machine Guns are the new WWE Tag Team Champions, and the Usos have reunited. A pretty wild final stretch of SmackDown on Friday. Your thoughts, Mr. Marceau, and what this means? First of all, an amazing accomplishment for a former TNA, Ring of Honor, New Japan Tag Team in the Motor City Machine Guns, but also for the Usos, getting back together kind of easily. This whole thing feels rushed, but it did make for a great moment on Friday. We'll get to the Raw stuff too, but wanted to get your 2 cents specifically on what we saw on SmackDown last week.
Yeah, I thought it was good, like you said. I think, it is a little, people you need to get to it, so then they get to it, and people say it's rushed.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
It is what it is. I think it made sense. Jay came out to help, basically cost the Tongans the championships because they cost him his belt on Raw. I think that made sense. They said the whole Jimmy stuff was kind of rushed, hugging. Yeah. I guess they kind of fleshed it out a little bit more on Raw. And I'm assuming they'll flesh it out a little bit more on SmackDown this week. But, the hug, it was kind of just more like an embrace. Nothing was really discussed. And like I said, on Raw, they kind of went into a little bit further on kind of the issues. And like you said, last time we saw us together, we were fighting each other,
Mm-hmm.
But I think it made a good moment. Machine Guns winning was the right move. I thought it was very well done. Roman looking on, I thought it was done really well.
Yeah, it was a great ending. There can be the argument. I don't have this argument, but I'm just playing devil's advocate here. that you talk about, like, I mentioned rushing and whatnot. WWE, are they rushing the Motor City Machine Guns? They debuted 2 weeks ago. They became number one contenders last week. And on that same night, they won the fucking titles. But I think it's a great moment because, one, we don't see it often. And two, it kind of gives the show that must-see feel like anything can happen at any given time. And I feel like right off the bat, they've established the Machine Guns. Yeah, they won with help from the Usos and the Bloodline and whatnot, the OG Bloodline. But it established them as a top-tier tag team. Not only not only because they're just great, but two, because they beat the fucking Bloodline, the top act on the entire show. So unless they lose the belts in a couple weeks, which is another, conversation entirely, I feel like they did a very nice job of establishing these guys as a top tag team right off the bat and making people kind of recognize, for lack of a better term, how great these guys actually are.
Yeah, no, I wouldn't say they were rushed at all. Like I said, it is quick. It was done quickly, but they beat the biggest team on the show, or the biggest group, whatever you want to call it. They're not spring chickens either, so it's not like I don't see them sticking around for too long. So I think you kind of have to establish that they're like who they are. People don't know who they are, so I think that's another thing. Like, kind of got to get the belts on them. Mm-hmm. And I had no issue with them winning already.
Did you fall for Solo Sikoa talking to Sami Zayn on Monday's Raw? They might recruit Sami back into the new Bloodline to be a part of War Games next month.
I fell for that. I didn't know it was Jimmy on SmackDown with the hoodie and the bandana.
Yeah, me too. Yeah.
And then when Jay came out, I thought it was another cousin. I didn't even look like him. I was stunned when he took that mask off. So, and then Sami talking to Solo. Like I said, we talked about before. I can already see it. Who's the fifth man? Sami Haluva kick on Jay. Joins the new Bloodline. I'm eating it up already.
I know. I figured you would be, but that was a great moment. A lot of fucking hoods and sweatshirts and bandanas. It brings me back to the not so good days of Roman Reigns retaining every single week, or on these pay-per-views with help of the Bloodline and their fucking sweatshirts and the hoods and whatnot. WrestleMania 39 and how dumb that whole thing was, but
greatest finish in WrestleMania history.
Solo's gone. Solo gets kicked out. Solo comes back with a sweatshirt. Like, that was still one of the dumbest. Not even me still crying over Cody Rhodes losing a year and a half ago. Even though he won this year, the execution of it is still fucking stupid as hell.
I still I'm still shocked when it was him every time.
Now Solo's passed that gimmick back to the Usos with Solo wearing the fucking, weekend outfit from the Super Bowl a couple of years ago with the black and red. Now the Usos are back to doing it, which is great. One thing also on the Raw side, we saw the continuation of the Bloodline stuff on Monday. Not really that eventful of an episode beyond that. But I did see yesterday, I saw this randomly. I was not really on Twitter much yesterday because I didn't want to avoid NXT spoilers, but I guess Rhea Ripley, they did an angle at the end of the show where she got bloodied or whatever in the parking lot. By Liv and Raquel. And, that's one thing. I don't know why they wouldn't do this on Raw, but apparently they did that because Rhea Ripley's actually hurt. I mean, what the fuck? I think that came from PW Insider, and they're not like a kayfabe fucking newsletter. Like, usually they're pretty spot on. I don't know how serious it is, but I mean, if so, Rhea just came back from an injury a couple of months ago. She was gone for a few months then. That's why she had to relinquish the championship. So I don't know how long she would be gone for now, but people are saying, oh, does she come back at the Rumble and win it and face Liv at Mania? Dude, I'm so fucking tired of this feud. I mean, I think the feud's been good, don't get me wrong, and we talked about this a couple of weeks ago. But to wait another 6 months for the fucking payoff to this shit, I mean, yeah, I guess it makes sense to blow it off at Mania if Rhea's going to be gone, but Rhea's already won the Rumble, like, I don't know, that doesn't really interest me. But what's your take on this whole thing? Is Rhea gone? Is she not gone? Is it kayfabe? What are you thinking?
Yeah, I mean, I saw the report too that, like I said, I saw NXT, I saw she got beat up, like you said, in the parking lot. And then, like, they basically, like you said, PW Insider said that she was actually hurt, so that's why they did it. I mean, I wouldn't hate the idea. I like the feud. I just feel like it's kind of like we're spinning our wheels at this point. Like, I mean, I figured we'd get her and Raquel, and then we just really haven't got that one-on-one yet. So, I mean, if she's actually her and we got to kind of push it on, I mean, I take it because I think they need to move on. It's kind of, like I said, I like it, but I don't know. I feel like it's kind of run its course a little bit. The problem, realistically, is there's no one. They haven't really built anyone else on Raw to really fend for the belt, go after the belt. Like, besides Liv, Raquel, and Rhea, I mean, everyone else is kind of stuck in a tag team, or they really haven't done anything else. But I mean, I think this kind of goes back to our normal weekly, monthly occurrence of arguing about how they don't need more women feuds that aren't over a title. I mean, if you had a singles one right now, it's quickly, okay, the babyface wins, and then you just book her against Liv. But we don't really have that right now. We just have random tag teams fighting each other. We'll probably get like a tournament or something else that's wicked lazy because they can't book a one-on-one women's feud that's not over a belt. But, I mean, this is kind of what happens. You put all your eggs in one basket and someone gets hurt, and then you don't have anyone, maybe like Io, but she's, like I said, she's the kind of in a tag team right now. But you don't really have anyone ready for Liv, and that's kind of the booking problem.
Yeah, no, exactly. Like I say, I don't want Rhea and Liv at WrestleMania, but then it's like, okay, then what? That's kind of the question. Like you said, like, who do you put in that spot instead? We haven't seen Lyra in weeks. Lyra would be great if they tried to build her back up, but they really haven't done much with her. Fuck no one Natalya, fuck no one like Keaton Carter or Katana Chance, whatever. You know, they have a lot of women, but they have very limited options because they don't really get anyone over is the problem. Pure trash collective, like no one cares. I know your t-shirt's still in the way, I apologize, but I personally I can't give a shit about a lot of the women on the show because they just don't make them feel important, so it's kind of the problem that they have right now. And that's something they have to keep in mind heading into WrestleMania. Get more women over. If Rhea's not going to be around, that is bad fucking news for that show. Because Rhea's like the only person, aside from Liv, that is prominently featured. Unless they turn Raquel on Liv before then, which would be so...
Unless they call Becky up and beg her to come back.
Honestly, you know what? Becky might be the smartest woman in wrestling. I feel like just... Because I was wondering the other day, why hasn't she come back yet? But honestly, I feel like she could be waiting for an opportunity. I mean, she's probably just like, hey, I'm just hanging out at home. But she might be the smartest woman in wrestling because you can wait for an opportunity like this where WWE is like, hey, listen, we really fucking need you right now. And they just throw even more money at her than they were going to 6 months ago. I feel like that's a genius move on her part if true.
No, I mean, like you said, she hasn't come back. I mean, they have no other really over baby faces to even, like, interest you against Liv. Like I said, maybe Io, but I mean, she just lost the belt. Yeah. Like, I don't know. Like I said, I feel like it's kind of pushing at this point. So, I mean, like I said, if that's the case, like I said, the smartest person is waiting for an opportunity, and hey, she could bend them over a barrel at this point.
She could. Hey, listen, it's a smart move on her part. Last thing for you, Mr. Marceau, before I let you go in a couple of minutes. Crown Jewel coming up on Saturday. Do want to get your quick predictions for the pay-per-view. Seth Rollins and Bronson Reed. I mean, we've talked about this before. I asked you last week. This has got to be a must-win situation for Bronson Reed, Rick, because if he doesn't win, he's dead in the fucking water.
Has to be.
Has to
win. I already told you, even though the new shirt he has is cool, if he loses, just pack up, go to Japan, TNA, I don't know. You got to leave. I mean, he can't lose here.
They book him great on Raw, but then he has not won a match in months. Like, literally, because he lost to Braun Strowman. He doesn't really wrestle otherwise, so he hasn't won in months. He's got to win this match. I know Rollins hasn't won in a while, but it's Rollins. It's Seth freaking Rollins, so definitely a win for Bronson Reed here. LA Knight, Andrade, Carmelo Hayes. I'm glad this is on the pay-per-view. They're actually getting Carmelo and Andrade on the show, which is great. I still think this results in a United States Championship retention for LA Knight, though. What do you think?
Yeah, no, I mean, I thought that's the greatest match of all time, but putting on Crown Jewel, I think, is a nice little, like, the big match, like, the actual, like, wrestling match of the night. So I think this will be good. Is it tied, or is someone up, or?
Andrade and Hayes are 3-3, and Game 7, as they call it, ended in a tie. So I feel like LA Knight's going to win.
I feel like Hayes should win.
No.
So I'll go with Hayes.
Okay, all right. Great pick. I got LA Knight retaining, but I would love to see Andrade or Hayes win the belt. Orton Owens, 1-on-1, I think for the first time ever on a pay-per-view. Thoughts on this match? I feel like after they kind of made Owens out to be this dangerous monster on SmackDown last week, he kind of has to win here. So I'm going to go... They both haven't won on pay-per-view like all fucking year, but I'm going to go Owens with the win here.
Yeah, I keep Owens' momentum here. I would have Owens win.
I agree. WWE Women's Tag Team titles, Jade and Bianca, Damage Control, Metaphor, Lash Legend and Jakara Jackson, and Chelsea Green and Piper Niven. And honestly, I'm going to say something nice about the Women's Tag Team division here. I think they've done a nice job building this up across all three shows. I did not think I'd be saying that, but they've actually made me care about the build for this match. I'm going to say Chelsea and Piper win because they have not been beaten yet by Jade and Bianca with the belts on the line, and if Jade and Bianca win here, who the fuck is left? So I would like to see Damage Control win. I'm going to go Chelsea and Piper Niven, though. Who do you got going on?
We're going very heel-centric here. I'm going with Damage Control.
Yeah, you're right. We are going heel-centric. Okay, Damage Control. New champs regardless, though, you think?
Yeah.
All right, I agree. Liv Morgan and Nia Jax for the Women's Crown Jewel Championship. Like anyone gives a shit. It really doesn't matter who wins here. I'm going to say Nia Jax. I feel like Liv beating Nia, she already beat her a couple of months ago. She was one of the last people to beat Nia. I just feel like that would be unbelievable. So I'm going to go Nia Jax here. What about you?
I want to say Liv wins, but Tiffany cashes the belt in on Liv.
Really? You think they're actually going to do that?
I mean, we're saying if no Rhea, they need something.
That is true.
So I think Liv wins, but Tiffany cashes in on Liv.
And Raw could use Tiffany Stratton on their show.
There you go.
All right. I like that. I like that a lot. So Liv wins, cash in, bold pick there by Mr. Marceau. Cody Rhodes, Gunther, first time ever this time for the men's Crown Jewel Championship. Again, don't really care, but the match itself should be great. This could go either way. I'm going to say Cody Rhodes wins. People are kind of set on Gunther winning because he should, but I just don't see them having Cody lose before he faces The Rock, at least one-on-one. So I'm going to say Cody Rhodes wins here, but I would prefer a Gunther victory. What do you think?
I think Cody's going to win, too.
Okay.
Like I said, I mean, I think both guys, I think Gunther should probably lose. I don't know, I think both guys, it's one of those things like both guys shouldn't be losing, so it's kind of tough. But I'm going to go with Cody. Like I said, if he's facing The Rock, I mean, he shouldn't be losing to Gunther.
Yeah, that's the whole problem. I mean, they shouldn't be doing champion versus champion. It's fucking stupid. It's just the Saudi thing. For a title, that doesn't matter. But, I mean, at least the match should be really good. And then as announced the other day, kind of random, out of nowhere, and rushed, but whatever, Roman Reigns and the Usos versus the Bloodline, and we don't know what three members of the new Bloodline they will be facing. But we haven't even seen Jay make up with Roman yet, and they're doing this fucking match, which is wild. But I'm going to pull the old gimmick, Mr. Marceau. You go first. Who do you got going over?
I'm going to prick. I think booking 101, I think the new Bloodline wins, and then the OG Bloodline will win at War Games.
I think so as well. I think you need to create a need for Sami Zayn to get involved, and if Roman Reigns wins here, again, like he did in Bad Blood, then why the fuck would they need Sami Zayn? That would just be stupid.
You can have Jimmy take the pin, no big deal, no sweat off your ass, and like I said...
And then call on Sami Zayn. It makes sense.
Yeah. Like I said, and then the babyface to win in War Games like they should. There you go. Perfect.
Exactly. That's booking 101. I totally agree. Would like to see it. That's Crown Jewel on Saturday. We'll talk about it next week here, Mr. Marceau, on the show. New episodes every single week. WrestleRant.com, WrestleRantRadio.com. Rate, review, subscribe. All that stuff is greatly appreciated. All right, Mr. Marceau, enjoy the weekend. Happy Halloween, and I'll catch your ass down the road, brother.
See you later, man.
Adios.